guys need it, go for it. Are devoted to strengthening the capacity of nonprofit and social sector organizations in North Carolina and beyond through research, education, and engagement. And we're glad that you're joining part of our community tonight. Let me go through a few ground rules and give you an idea of the flow for tonight before I go ahead and introduce our speakers. I will share a couple of thoughts on the topic as maybe some insight about why we at the Institute think that this idea of hybridity and innovative structures in social sector organizations is an important thing and why this is timely. Then I will have the distinct honor and high privilege of introducing our speakers for tonight. And they will each spend about 8 to 10 minutes sharing their insights and thoughts and experiences around the innovative structures within their organizations. And then once they've shared their thoughts and insights, we'll invite questions and comments from the audience and maybe turn this more into a conversation and not just a presentation of us up here. So our topic for tonight, exploring innovative structures for social sector organizations. And part of what drives a lot of our thinking or my thinking around this more recently, I won't speak for Elizabeth and Chris and Sandy at this point in time, is this idea of hybridity. Right? And if we hear about hybridity, the sort of definition of that is an intersection or an interaction or crossbreeding of two unlike cultures or traditions. And potentially a lot of what we'll hear tonight is this idea of hybridity. This sort of more traditional philanthropic, or at least what we think of as traditional nonprofit and philanthropic work, and then business, and we'll see how those things come together. But the question is, why do we need to think about hybridity and cross-breeding of these two potentially different cultures? And I posit that there are potentially two reasons for this. One, resources. Nonprofits can fund themselves in roughly 3 ways: philanthropy, government funding, and earned income. 2 of those streams of funding are either flat and stagnating or actually decreasing. As a country, annually we donate 2% plus or minus a couple of percent of GDP. No matter what our tax structure is, no matter where we are in our economy, grab 2% of GDP. Right? Philanthropy doesn't have the capacity to help nonprofits come to scale to address the challenges of our communities. And here in North Carolina, and also at the federal level, that government revenue stream is potentially going to be decreasing. So what does that leave nonprofits to do? There's rising needs in their communities. There are great challenges in their communities. But yet, how do they come to scale to meet that level? So they have wicked, complex problems that they can't handle on their own. So think about, how do they come together? How do they get access to the capital that they need to grow their organizations to meet the needs of the challenges that the organizations are facing? So joining these two issues together, sort of the challenges of our communities and the sort of changing resources that are available for nonprofits, are what we need to sort of think about. This is where this idea of hybridity comes into play, and at its heart, that's what our panelists will be discussing tonight. Right, so, leading us off tonight will be Leigh-Kathryn Bonner. Leigh-Kathryn is founder and CEO of Be Downtown. She is a graduate of North Carolina State University with a minor in nonprofit studies and a 4th-generation beekeeper. She grew up in Raleigh, started Be Downtown her junior year of college with 2 rooftop beehives and a whole lot of passion for what could be. She always wanted to make a difference in the world, and the best way she knew how was through beekeeping. So with help from countless amazing people, a fantastic team, and a community that cares deeply for their mission, Be Downtown has grown into a company she is proud to work for and to be a part of. After we hear from Leigh-Kathryn, Marc Dreyfors will speak to us. Marc is a Duke alum, so yes, we do allow people from the dark blue school down the road to join with us. Grew up in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. and coastal North Carolina, where he saw population growth impact the natural world. He did his undergraduate study in environmental science at UNC Wilmington, where he studied philosophy and religion, and pretty much everything else the university had to offer. As a graduate student, he studied resource economics and policy at the Duke Nicholas School, and he founded Forests of the World. He spent more than 20 years working to improve and promote sustainable livelihoods and green living both around the world and around the block. If you ask Marc how to most effectively change the world, he will tell you that a big picture vision requires very local impact. So once again, right, another form of hybridity. Bringing home tonight, wrestling home tonight, will be Oshana Watkins. Oshana is a nonprofit professional with 15 years of experience in relationship building and motivating volunteers to achieve agency needs in advocacy and fundraising. She specializes in organizational risk and personnel management, policy and procedure development, and strategic planning. She has a master's of public administration and a graduate certificate in nonprofit management from NC State. And an undergraduate communication and African American studies degrees from UNC Greensboro. Oshana is past president of the Association of Fundraising Professionals, Triangle Chapter, and sits on the governor-appointed NC State-wide Independent Living Council Board. Currently, she is Director of Administration at Wake Enterprises, a nonprofit organization serving adults with disabilities, and mommy to 3-year-old Vivian. So with that, we'll turn it over to Leigh-Kathryn.
I might use this because my voice is done. Okay. Is this maybe done? Hello? Is that working? Yeah. Okay, cool. Sorry. Spread out over here. So, sorry guys, my voice is a little bit dead right now. We've had a very busy week with the bees. So my name is Leigh-Kathryn Bonner, and I'm the founder and CEO of a business, or beesness, as we like to call it, called Bee Downtown. And what we do is we install and maintain beehives for businesses throughout the Triangle, and we're spreading throughout North Carolina. Our goal is to be in about 3 new states next year. What you guys might not know is Carter's got the secret back there, but there are 3 big beehives up on the rooftop here that Murphy's Natural and Loading Dock has. So we have businesses from across the Triangle and now more so across North Carolina that sponsor these beehives. I started Bee Downtown when I was a junior at NC State. I'm a 4th-generation beekeeper. I studied international studies, so it had nothing to do with bees. People are like, how did that happen? It runs in my family. I was interning for the Goodman family at American Tobacco, and I asked if I could put 1 beehive on a rooftop there. Studies show that honeybees thrive in urban environments. They have more well-balanced diets. Their digestive systems are stronger. They're in stable living conditions, so they're not as stressed out. So I asked if I could put one there, and he said, sure, why not? I don't really care. So I was like, great. So let me bring 60,000 stinging insects to your campus. This is going to be real fun. And it's been great ever since. We brought bees to Burt's Bees. After that, their world headquarters is at American Tobacco, and it got a lot of publicity, more so than I ever thought that it would. And so other businesses started hearing about it, and they started asking, well, can we get these hives? And for the businesses, it's a marketing tool. It's a green marketing tool. Studies show that millennials are more likely to take jobs with companies that have some sort of pull or commitment to the environment, to bettering the world. They'll take a pay cut to have jobs with those companies. Employees are happier at businesses that have environmental and community outreach within them. So these companies started hearing about Bee Downtown and wanting beehives. Well, when we started, Bee Downtown was a nonprofit. It was meant to just be really a project while I was in school while I was studying at American Tobacco and interning there, and then I competed in the entrepreneurial games at NC State and ended up winning that. And as we started to grow the business, I told my parents after they were wonderful and paid for 4 years of my college, and I got the dream job offer, turned it down and asked them to invest in my living expenses for a year, and my mom was like, no, absolutely not. Like, you go take that job, you ask for that back. But they ended up making me have a Shark Tank in our living room, and I like full-blown pitch outfit, slide deck, all which way, they told me to leave and deliberated and called me, I came back, they were not messing around. They told me what needed to be changed, what they, just thought was going to be very beneficial, what wasn't going to be beneficial, and They said you've got 1 year to make a profit and to be able to hire someone and pay yourself. And so a year later, Be Downtown was profitable. I was able to pay myself, and we had the first employee. So, you know, I didn't know the world of like taking on investment, not making profit for multiple years. I had 1 year for mom and dad. So I booked it for a year. So Be Downtown, it started as a nonprofit, but we realized as businesses wanted these hives that, you know, the foundation cycles and funding cycles were, you know, you have spring and fall cycles, and we can't put beehives in the fall. So really we had spring cycles, and that made it very difficult for us to be able to get contracts with companies. So we switched Be Downtown to a for-profit, and it came out of marketing budgets. And it was very easy for companies to be able to move the funds for marketing. It's a pretty low cost for a green marketing campaign. We do all the work, so it's a turnkey approach. And we do classes with employees. They get to put on suits and work outside with the bees. It's an extended learning opportunity. It gets people out of the office. We do classes where you know, we'll bring school groups in, and so it's a way for the businesses to be able to show that they're promoting. We have so Kristen Fogel's here, and so she's one of our newest sponsors for beehives as well for North Carolina Museum of Art, and that's one of our biggest installations this year, which we're super excited about. And that came from a relationship with the Nonprofit Institute. So sorry for that detour really quick. But so then, you know, we send updates to the companies about the hives, and employees get like super attached to them. At Capital Broadcasting Company, each of the hives on the roof have, they're painted with the company's, the division within Capital Broadcasting. So every time we send out a quarterly update, it turns into this battle of like which company worked the hardest over, you know, over the course of the quarter, which hive produced the most food and honey. So it's great. Companies and employees really enjoy it. We kept the nonprofit because education is very important to me. So many children, even adults in cities now, have never seen agriculture. North Carolina is one of the largest agricultural states. And there's a disconnect with it, but a little bit of education goes a very long way, especially when it comes to honeybees and where food comes from. So we kept that piece of Be Downtown. Part of what we make every year goes into the nonprofit. One of the things that was, you know, pounded into us in the Nonprofit Institute in Richard's class was that you have to be sustainable. I mean, Be Downtown is a business that's built on sustainability, and if your nonprofit is, you know, scrambling for grants and you've got one donor source and they pull back, you're in really big trouble. So for Be Downtown, we write grants, we have funding sources, but we have this steady bit of income that we can take from the nonprofit to put into, or the for-profit to put into the nonprofit, so that we can continue to do the education, we can continue to do the piece that I think makes a difference in the world. So we've grown a lot. When I graduated, we had 7 beehives with 2 businesses. 2 years later, we have over 50 companies that we work with and 100 beehives, ranging from businesses, you know, like the Loading Dock and American Tobacco Campus and Boulder and Beer Company, to this year we're bringing on IBM and SAS and Blue Cross Blue Shield of North Carolina and NC State, Bandwidth, Waste Industries. We've got this lineup of big companies because they're seeing that return on investment no longer has to mean a monetary return on investment. There is this broader community return on investment where people, you know, want to work for you. They want to buy your products. They want to be a part of what you're doing. I'll just diverge a little bit really quick. Our favorite saying for Be Downtown that we use is, by herself, one honeybee makes a 1/12 of a teaspoon of honey in her life. But together, a hive can generate over 80 pounds of honey in a matter of months. So if we as a community can work together like a hive, we can collectively create lasting change in the world that we're proud to be a part of. Each business, each organization is like a beehive. You know, it's this very efficient structure, and there's, you know, the queen bee, Beyonce, that's the boss, in the beehive. But if communication breaks down, you see your hive start to diminish. If there's not enough food in the community for the bees to be able to feed off of, you see the hive diminish. Beekeepers don't generally keep one beehive in their apiary because they know that beehives work like trees. They grow off of each other and they grow together. And a beekeeper can share resources. If one hive isn't doing well, it can share resources from another hive and build up that hive so that they're equal. And that's just like the triangle, it's just like the region. You know, as your business does well, that you look outwardly to the rest of your apiary, to the rest of Raleigh, and you say, hey, this organization is doing something that we love. We can share resources. It doesn't have to be monetary, but it can be how, you know, we have employees come and volunteer their time here, or we can have, you know, work days. I know Loading Dock just did a work day for Earth Day, and, you know, we can invest in our broader community, and that's pollinating. You know, that's like the beehive, that's pollinating the broader community to make a difference in the world. And then, you know, the bees are pollinating 3-mile radiuses. So there's another apiary, and that's the Durham apiary. And the businesses there are starting to work together, and they're creating these bonds and these links, like hexagonal structures that, you know, that's the strongest structure that we have. That's what the bees make in their beehive, but that's also what we're making in the community as we work together to create this change. And so we're pollinating much more than just our own businesses. And when you can identify that link with businesses, you know, that might be big, like Bandwidth or Blue Cross Blue Shield, and you can have them invest in your success as you invest in their success, then everyone is building each other up. And you're creating this community, this environment that people want to be a part of, and they want to help you. You can't do it by yourself. You have to have a community that backs you. So much about why Be Downtown, I think, has been successful is that, you know, we share a story with people and we invite people in to be a part of it. So much about honeybees is negative, that they're declining, that, you know, they're on the cover of Time magazine, and what happens if the bees disappear. But what we do is we try to tell people in the community that your little bit of help, you know, planting pollinator-friendly plants with your child outside makes a difference, because then as your neighborhood starts to do that and your kids tell their friends about it, then you're creating a change. And that is very similar to the nonprofit, the for-profit world. It's when we stop looking just inwardly for our own success and we look towards other people and how we can help them, we all do well. There's an African saying called Ubuntu, and it's one of my favorite words. It's, you know, when I hurt, you hurt. When I win, you win. We do this together, and we are a team. And I think that, you know, that is how the nonprofit world works. I think that is how big businesses are starting to realize that they'll be successful now, because people are starting to hold corporations and companies to a much higher standard than they used to be held to. So I hope that this has been helpful for you guys. You know, we've changed our business model a lot over the last 2 years, and we finally got something that we really like. But it's that Be Downtown, the nonprofit, is sustainable on its own because the for-profit is doing well. And we are, you know, working with companies and with organizations to make a difference in the community, so everyone wants to be a part of it. They don't want to be the business that missed out on getting beehives this year, because there's a lot of media that's covering it, you know, their name is getting out there, and so they all want to jump on that train. So, you know, I think as you guys are working on building your organizations, building your businesses, to think of how you can tell a story. The most successful business, I mean, think about Patagonia and think about North Face, and, you know, so many of these really big businesses that have a social impact based in them. They have a story behind it, and it's a story that people can be excited to be a part of. So think about that as you're building your company and building your brand, and that will take you so far.
Well, that's really amazing. That's really cool. My name is Marc Dreyfors. I've got shorts on because I just came out of the woods of northeastern North Carolina and had 3 days of rain on us. I was out with a bunch of contractors preparing canoe platforms as part of the Roanoke River Partners canoe trail. And so the reason I'm kind of saying that, besides trying to explain my shorts and kind of lack of professional attire and dirty shoes, probably a little bit smelly too, but is that northeastern North Carolina has some of the poorest counties, and this canoe platform was an effort by my roommate at Duke to bring economic development to that area, that region. And the idea of ecotourism, or bringing people into an area of high nature. It's quite interesting to know that globally, places of high biodiversity are also places that are extremely poor, and we need to come up with models that can help those regions stabilize and protect those areas of biodiversity, because biodiversity is so incredibly important to our lives. So my life has been about this issue of market failure. So we have given a platform, a stage to this idea of capitalism can do so much. And it is obvious that it doesn't, yet most people will continue to push this idea of the free markets and the will of the person in the marketplace. But what I've been doing since graduating school has been to address these issues of market failure. So market externalities. So one of the major market failures, we don't trade biodiversity on the Chicago board. So for about 20 years, I've worked in handicraft development, working with indigenous communities and women's groups around the world, trying to find products that were made from natural materials to bring into markets, both internationally but also locally. So I spent quite a bit of time doing small business development and handicraft development with very poor communities in very beautiful places. Tough job. Occasionally I got to actually go visit those places, but not often. It's very expensive to travel, and most of the time we work with nonprofits and conservation groups in those communities, spending a lot of time on emails. But I became a little bit jaded with this idea that we could use market systems to protect and save natural areas. There's so many issues, intractable issues. With climate change coming on so rapidly, these places are disappearing. They're being affected by changes in climate, changes in weather. Just recently, being down on the Roanoke River, I saw vast areas, Tupelo, being shredded by caterpillars. Caterpillars just boom this time of year, and they eat every leaf on a tree. And there were huge sections of the forest completely devoid of leaves. It looked like wintertime. And what's so amazing about the Roanoke River is that this is one of the largest hardwood swamps in the eastern United States, and it is the home of neotropical migrants, massive amounts of neotropical migrants, and they come in and they swarm in and they eat those caterpillars. But if climate change impacts our world such that the timing of the leafing and the timing of the birds and the timing of the pollinators are so whacked out, we are not going to be doing well. So I've been concerned about biodiversity, but I also got interested in this issue of, all right, when we were selling these handicrafts, moving them from point A to point B, it had a large carbon footprint. So trade globally at this point, we are in a heavily globalized economy, is hyper dysfunctional because we are not internalizing the true cost of fossil fuels. We are taking carbon out of the ground, burning it, and using it to drive our lights, everything. Everything that we touch in our economy has a carbon footprint. And so we have got to address this issue of market failure, of carbon, of dirty energy, of pollution, of our impacts in the economic interactions, the societal interactions. And how do we address this on a local level? We can pass things like carbon taxes on a national level. Good luck with that right now, right? So I doubt Raleigh's going to do anything real soon. But is it possible on a local level that we as a community can come up with a strategy to put a proper price on energy? So what I've been doing for the last 10 years has, and I can possibly, I can't go there. I was going to go to our website, but what we do is we collect waste from local restaurants, veggie oil, fryer grease, and we bring it back to our site. We're actually in an old brownfield site in East Durham, a Hope 6 community, very poor, an area, actually our area was the old red light district for Durham, and we are right next to a couple of scrap yards, and we have people who are addicted to crack and zipping by with what they've just scrapped, wanting to know where the scrap yard is so they can get some quick bucks to go feed their addiction. Everybody on our site actually has some kind of drug issue or chronically underemployed issue. So we have taken on a social justice and environmental justice component to what we do. So we're not only in a brownfield site, it's the old BP oil petroleum site, but we're also trying to address this fundamental issue of carbon and putting a price on dirty energy. So we collect the veg oil from local restaurants, we go up, suck it out, bring it back to our site, and we cook the oil. We actually have a big tanker truck that came today. It wasn't supposed to come today, it was supposed to come tomorrow. And I'm hoping they're getting about 6,000 gallons of oil that we just cooked out, transferred into that tanker truck. We used to make our own fuel. We have all the equipment to make our fuel, and we have a very actually sophisticated system. We use a cavitator reactor Very, very cool piece of technology. Very simple. It's a salad dressing emulsifier. But it makes great fuel. But we don't do it because we lost the tax credit that was coming from the federal government. There's $1 credit back from the government to blend biodiesel and diesel. That's the craziest subsidy you can possibly imagine. And it went away several years ago for 2 years. And then it just was reinstalled for 2 years, and now it's gone away again. So if you're a small business trying to depend on $1 tax credit for every gallon that you produce, that is a tough business model, a really tough business model, particularly if you go to the banks and say, hey, you know, we're doing this thing and our margins are really thin, but we got to get this $1 back from the government, but it may go away, and not so good. And investors too. Who's going to look at our numbers and say, oh yeah, that's a great investment? So we've got to get away from this idea of a subsidy to renewables and put a price on dirty energy, a carbon tax. It's a no-brainer. If that happens, then our business model will work a lot better. So we started out as a business. We started in handicrafts, and then we flipped to a biodiesel company with the idea of making fuel and selling it. Unfortunately, the margins on fuel are very, very thin. So where we figured it out finally, and it took a while, is that we got calls from people saying, hey, do you know anybody who has a bus that wants to run that biodiesel? And we were like, called all the local bus companies, said, hey, we'll put a tank in your backyard and you can fuel one of your buses to run all of these clients that are calling us looking for a green business. Nobody took us up on that. And eventually we got an opportunity to buy a bus, and it just took off. People bought our services to move people around on biodiesel buses. So now we have probably the largest fleet in the country running on 100% biodiesel, locally made. For a while, we weren't getting all of our fuel locally. We were sending off our veggie oil. We made it for a while, and then that didn't work. We couldn't make enough money. So now we're sending our veggie oil off to a company in Hickory, and they're making the fuel, and we're buying the fuel back. So it's North Carolina made, and it is actually made from the waste oil from our local community here in the Triangle. So it's close. So great thing about biodiesel is that it reduces air toxics. So the biggest bang for buck for our community is the reduction in exposure to particularly young people in air toxics. There's strong causal connection to asthma and mental health disorders and learning disabilities with hyperexposure to pollutants. So biodiesel, if we make it in our community, should be put into buses, school buses. Unfortunately, very few fleet managers are going to be interested in doing that. So we're trying to show that it can be done. We have like 7 different engine platforms that we're running this in. We're actually running people to the People's Climate March this Saturday. Anybody interested in going? Sierra Club's actually organizing it. So the challenges of making the fuel are enormous, and we don't do it anymore, so we're buying it from the local producer. But the biggest bang for buck, and where this can have huge impact on a local community, is in the economic multipliers of making energy locally. So when you make food, make energy, and provide credit, those are the biggest leakages of capital out of our community. So if we want to build resiliency and promote sustainability, we've got to block those leakages. And biodiesel is one that is a no-brainer. We don't make enough of it. We don't make enough waste veggie oil in our daily lives. We produce about 10 gallons of waste veggie oil per person per year, so you're not going to get very far. But if we can simply put that veggie oil into school buses, we could gain enormous public health benefits from reduction in exposure in air toxics. So when biodiesel is made from waste veggie oil, it also has a very low carbon footprint. So the combination of a nonprofit, so we went back and produced a nonprofit after we got started with our businesses. We realized that we needed to be able to go after grants. We needed to be able to solicit folks for funding because the business market for green businesses is so hard. The willingness to pay for green products is so hard. So now we have this site called the Goal Site, and it is managed by our nonprofit, and we have several LLCs that manage several businesses, and we have a couple of other businesses like an incubator that are green that use that site. But one of the things that's really quite amazing about this project is that we are cooking veggie oil, and there's food and water that's left over, so we're composting that waste on site. So one of the side benefits of what we're doing may actually be the bioremediation of that property, of this brownfield site. And that may actually be one of the higher values of what we do. So we're spreading this compost over this property, and it's helping increase the organic matter in the upper soils where all the petroleum residuals have been polluting the soils. So that's kind of a neat little thing. But if you want to check out more about what we do, just go to our website. You know, we have a social justice mission. We work with DURC, Urban Ministries, Durham Rescue Mission, TROSA. We employ a lot of folks who have addiction issues. It's very, very challenging to have a small business trying to grow it and have labor that is, say, not super technical or have their own challenges, financial, emotional, nutritional, all sorts of things. So it's a tall task for us to be able to take those on, but I think that this is where the hybrid model is very helpful. For capital going forward, how we've been able to fund our growth in all of these buses that we now operate. And buses is where it's at, because that's where we make our money. We make a lot of money doing the transportation. We have to compete in a market that's very competitive, but we actually make enough to be able to fund all the other pieces that have still market failure. So where the nonprofit role is in these additional values that we need to attribute or attain that we can't get from the bottom line. And for our businesses, getting financial capital has always been challenging, but we've been using a peer-to-peer lending approach, and that has worked out, where we've gotten friends to loan us small amounts of money for short periods of time, and we pay them back with interest. We've collateralized the loans with like buses, and that has worked, and it's gotten us to where we are now, and we're doing pretty well. So that's my story. All right.
Well, I don't know if I'm as interesting as Leigh-Kathryn and Marc. I'm Oshana Watkins. I'm with Wake Enterprises. I have been there 13 years, worn a variety of hats. How many folks are from nonprofits? So y'all know about hats, right? All different types. But Wake Enterprises was founded in 1979 by a group of concerned parents. Their children had disabilities that included autism, Down syndrome, cerebral palsy. Some had behavioral challenges. Some of them had physical challenges as well as their developmental challenges. And the parents were concerned because their kids were aging out of the school system. Where are they going to go? What are they going to do? How are they going to be productive members of society? So they founded Wake Enterprises in a church basement. They were parents with a dream. And they started about with, I think it was 5 or 6 of them and their kids, and they grew. They grew and they grew. We now serve 240 adults with developmental disabilities every day. We have about 90 staff that we employ, and we are off of Wake Forest Road, also known as Floodgates right now. And we are also outside of Fuquay Marina. We have a facility there as well. We have a budget of about $2.8 million around there. And as Richard was talking about, those 3 funding sources, government, y'all know where that's headed. We've received the same rates for our state funding dollars since 1981. The same rates. And that's pretty much looking the same moving forward, probably decreasing. We receive about 5 to 10% in development funds and philanthropic funds. And then we receive about the rest in contractual services. Some of the folks that come to us come from group homes or private pay, things of that nature. But we hit a roadblock. You know, we bought a new building in 2008, right the day the market crashed. We signed on the dotted line. You know, we were doing well. We're like, yes, it's a great day. Wait, what? We did pretty well for the next 2 years, but as you know, as nonprofits, we usually get hit a couple years after the boom. And we got hit. We sustained. We're doing well. We're still funding was still great. As these folks were talking about grants were up. I know if y'all heard of ERA funding. We had a lot of federal funds, money being thrown at nonprofits, which was great. However, we hit a little downturn. One of those contractual organizations, which produces about $500,000 a year, we had a bit of dispute with. And they were out of our building for a year and a half. So, a year and a half with a fourth of your funding hurt. we tried to do something new. We were like, okay, we want our folks to have a social enterprise. We want our folks to not just come to us and work, but we want them to own something, have a project, have their own purpose. So we invested in a bottling corporation or machine. We said, okay, we met with a guy down east, and he had green products, and we said, okay, we'll bottle all green products. That'll be a hit. Looking back, we probably should have researched a little bit more and invested a little bit more. Maybe not monetarily, but in terms of knowing what to do. So we purchased this machine, received a grant for $25,000 from Duke, and we're excited about it. So we got this off the ground at our Fuquay location. We got the labeling, the bottling, everything going great. Until we realized we didn't really know what we were doing. We thought the guy down east who we were going in partnership with, he dreamed big for us. He said he had all these contracts, said we were going to do this and do that.